Ahead, I'll talk with author and illustrator Jan Brett about her picture book, Alice in a Winter Wonderland. It's set in Alaska, and it's a retelling of the classic Alice in Wonderland story. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Jan Brett is the New York Times #1 best-selling author and illustrator of over 40 picture books. Her books have been chosen as Best Children's Books of the Year by The New Yorker, Parents, Redbook, and others. And she joins us to talk about her latest, Alice in a Winter Wonderland. Jan, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you.
Before we talk about this latest book, I'd like to get to know your background a little bit. I understand that you decided you wanted to be an illustrator as a child.
I can remember my first grade teacher, Mrs. Lofgren, you never forget your first grade teacher, asked us what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I said, children's book illustrator. And now that it's my job, it's even better than I thought it would be because I get to color all day long.
And how would you describe your illustration style?
Well, I think I like detail. I think if I have any talent at all, it's that I remember so clearly being 6 years old and loving my books, but being very particular about the artwork. And I liked books that took me to another place, that I felt I could walk into the pages. And so I try to replicate that 6-year-old idea of having it have a sense of place. It's almost like you feel like you could smell the smells, hear the noises, that you're being transported.
So it sounds like you've answered this a bit already, but why is it that you enjoy writing for this age group?
I really don't like writing. I write like illustrating. So the illustrations, I think many people would think would be more sophisticated for children. But my point of view is that children are these bright, sponge-like, inquiring minds that love to know everything they can with this energy and this sense of discovery. They're discovering the world, and they need all those special details because maybe their vocabulary or their experience isn't quite what they would wish it could be in order to communicate. But then in my books, I have all these clues that tell about, let's say the rabbit in the white in Alice's Winter Wonderland. He's got clothes on, he's got his watch, and they can look at that and pick up lots of clues like I did when I was little. Those are the books that I loved. I can remember one book, it was when I was like 6 or 7. It was the Arabian Nights, and it had an Arabian horse with a man with a turban with a feather, and the horse was, I loved horses. I knew it was Arabian. I thought, aha, Arabian Nights, Arabian horse. And I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up, is have the frame of reference match the story, the time and place, and all that information is picked up because kids love to look and they get their pointer finger out and go around the pages. And the other thing is I was a little bit of an anxious kid, so I would always look at the back page. So now that I'm doing my own books, I give little hints about what's going to come. So there's no surprises.
So this is another of your books where you've retold a classic children's story. What is it you enjoy about sort of putting a new spin on these stories?
Well, I just love these books when I was a child, and I don't want them to disappear. In the case of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, it's really a novella, so you kind of miss it when you're young, really young. So this is really, the illustrations tell the story. So the words are fairly simple. I mean, it really fits the picture book category, but it's not the wordage is very limited, so that you can. Although sometimes I'll put in a word that kids might have to look at as what context it's in. So, because my favorite author was Beatrix Potter, and that's what she did. And I appreciated that because you're a literary man. You know how you kind of collect words when you're a kid and you go, I know this word now. So that's what I do as well.
And I did note that compared to some picture books, your vocabulary is a bit more advanced. And because you're dealing with Alaskan creatures specifically, you're using some terms that kids might not be normally aware of.
Yeah. Well, there's one big one, which is the Smilodon. So when she goes down the rabbit hole, her wonderland is the Ice Age because we've been glaciated the North America like 4 times, and the last glaciation was 12,000 years ago when humans lived at the same time as the megafauna. So I don't mention megafauna in the book, but the Smilodon is this cat, saber-toothed cat that roamed the Arctic when people did. I think the climate was a little bit warmer at that point. But so I talked about it with my editor, and she didn't want me to put Smilodon in it. And I was talking to a friend of mine who had just read an article about paleontologists. The most knowledgeable paleontologists are people getting their PhD and little boys from 8 to 12. So I thought, if they can learn the names of dinosaurs, wouldn't it be fun to add some of the Ice Age animals to their collection of creatures that they, can enjoy? And I mean, a Smilodon with the great saber teeth and the tasseled ears. I mean, I couldn't resist it being a stand-in for the Cheshire Cat.
Now, in this book, because it is a retelling and it's set in Alaska, you've switched out some of the characters. Of course, the rabbit is still there, but some of the other characters, they're different animals than in the original story.
That was a lot of fun. I think my best little gem was that Lewis Carroll was had a dodo in his pool of tears, which is where Alice falls into after she's cried when she's very much bigger, and it becomes a pool of tears. That's the first time that he asks us to stretch our imaginations and why the book was so beloved to me when I was little. But he had the dodo, so I discovered there was an extinct animal similar to the dodo in that it was 3 feet tall, flightless, had a giant beak, and was called the great auk, and that lived in North America and went extinct about the same time as the dodo. So that was probably my favorite replacement one. And then when it came to the old prospector, I didn't think it was very nice to say Mad Hatter because it has a connotation that we don't really, these days, we like to be more understanding of people. So he's an old prospector. He's just lost his social skills a little bit because he's been off on his claim. And let's see what else. Then the mock turtle is instead of being a calf, it's a moose calf. And another favorite would be the caterpillar, because the caterpillar is smoking a hookah in Lewis Carroll's version. I don't think they knew about how harmful tobacco was in those days. So he is playing the double bass on the mushroom.
Would you read a small portion of the book for us to give us a taste of what readers will find here?
I would love to. And I have to tell you, it was very daunting to do illustrations to Lewis Carroll's incredibly iconic work. But here goes. Coming out the other side, Alice bumbled into a large mushroom. "Who are you?" asked a caterpillar. "Oh, I hardly know, sir. Curious things are happening to me, and now I'm the size of a buttercup." The caterpillar sighed. "I can help. One side of my mushroom will make you smaller, and one side will make you taller."
I'm talking with Jan Brett about Alice in a Winter Wonderland, and our conversation will continue. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. And thank you. This book is, I was just noting because of some of your other books, this obviously set in Alaska, it's set in the Ice Age, there's lots of wintry weather, but there's often wintry weather in some of your other books.
Well, I know. I love snow. I have to admit, it's my favorite part of the year, and I love the way it transforms everything so that you can go out to the bird feeder and you get lost and it's just your backyard. But we were talking about Lewis Carroll, and would you like to know a secret about this book that's not in the flap copy or anything else?
Sure.
Okay. He was a math professor, and he loved puzzles and math. So my editor and art director and I were talking about how, because of the Arctic setting, what you just brought up. There aren't so many bright colors as if you might have in the tropics or, who knows what. And so I said, well, I'll put some of the playing cards, which begin the book and end the book, along the borders. And so I sequence them, and I think you might be able to say that, put that in. But they 3.1, 4.5. Do those numbers sound familiar to you? It's pi. So it's a mathematical device or an equation describing the circumference of a circle divided by the diameter. And it goes all the way, and it goes on to infinity because it can't be divided evenly. So all the playing cards keep on with that sequence of pi. And I didn't say anything about it because I'm hoping this little child that loves math is going to say, those numbers sound awfully familiar.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out. Occasionally I'd think, okay, these two cards add up to this number, and it just happened in circumstance that these two also added up to the same number. But I didn't catch that it was pi. That's very clever.
And then when they have the croquet game and you see the cards I kept those the same ones that Lewis Carroll had in his book. So some of the things I kept the same, and some things, well, with all this imagination running around, I couldn't help but add a few things myself. And my big regret is I couldn't put his poems. The best I could do is put "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat, How I Wonder Where You're at the tea party scene. And you can see that there's a little bat, hidden in that picture. You have to look for it.
And there are a few other lines, like where Alice talks about this being curiouser and curiouser,
yes,
which people will remember from the original story.
And you know how when you grow up, there's kind of an unwritten motto that kind of your parents or parent, kind of believe in. Well, my parents loved us to be curious, and they really encouraged that. And I think when I was little, that really resounded that she's curious. And I wanted to be curious because I wanted to find out things. And I loved her as a character because she's curious, and then she's spunky, and she has to kind of stand up for herself. Well, especially to the Red Queen, to the Queen of Hearts.
I have another question about process. And as you well know, frequently with picture books, you have an illustrator and an author, two different people that work together through an editor. You're both. So do you feel like that gives you a creative advantage?
Oh, absolutely. Because whenever you're working with another person, you want to kind of protect them because you feel like, wow, it's an honor to work with this person. You want to make sure that they like what you're doing. And I just kind of like to be, how I try to explain it to the kids when I'm doing my talks, that something takes hold when you're concentrating and focusing on something. And I've heard other authors mention this. It's almost like the story's writing itself and you're going along for the ride. You often hear adult authors saying, oh, and then this character had to die, and I really didn't want them to die. I don't really know how to describe it. I think that we just have this storytelling method that has gone all through the ages. Human beings have self-selected because they're good storytellers. It's a way of giving information. It's a way of passing on knowledge. And I love being able to be part of that. But I just don't want people to cramp my style. I just want it to come from that inner place. And so that's why, I guess, the short answer would be, that's why I would love to illustrate and write. And it has been a challenge with Lewis Carroll because I'm so daunted by his magnificent work.
I think some people don't understand, and I understand why, but they might look at a picture book and think, oh, that must be simple,
Yeah.
But it's not. You're restricted by a certain number of pages. You have to get your story delivered in a certain number of words. And you're doing that delicate balance between what do you show and what do you say. So it's a much bigger challenge than I think most people understand to create a book like this.
Now with Alice, it's funny that you would mention that. It took me 2 years to do this book, and it's not the normal 32 pages of a picture book. And I have to say that I was thinking, oh, it should end now. but it didn't end. It went on because it's 40 pages. So the way I address that is with a book dummy. It's like a miniature version where I just sketch out everything. Maybe it takes two weeks to do. And I'll say to myself, boy, it doesn't have enough action in this part, or a lot it's about the pictures. We need to know more about this character. Let's have a close-up of that character. And so a lot of that work is done in the dummy stage. And that's always kind of torturous because, you never really feel like you've got a book until, maybe 3 or 4 months into it. Even though I don't know how many books I've written, maybe over 40 probably. You just don't take it for granted. It's like it's part of my life, but I always hope the next one is going to be a little bit better, and it's mysterious. I guess that's what I'd like to say. It's a little bit of a mysterious process. You hope it's going to happen. You always, when you look at the Olympics and you see like these gymnasts, you're going, what is she thinking? Or what is he thinking? Is it going to really happen? Are you going to be able to do that double thing? And I'm sure they have doubts, and I have doubts too. I respect the job very much.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you about your bus tour.
Oh, the bus tour.
Tell us a bit about, this is something you do to publicize your books, and you've been doing, I guess, on an annual basis for a while. Tell us about that.
It's wonderful. So this is my time to talk to kids and teachers and librarians. Oh, I think we should have a T-shirt that says "Teachers and librarians are saving the world," because they need books to teach children how to read. And everybody is and I can understand why parents want their children to be prepared, but sometimes the screen time goes overboard. And I think that they, love books themselves, and they're going to see this process happen. There'll be a teacher or a librarian, and they'll have some of their kids in their class will come to the signing, and they'll tell me little tidbits. And sometimes a child will notice something that the adult with them has never seen, because they have these, child eyes that just pour over the pages. So all that gives me great inspiration and happiness.
So, what's next for you?
What's next? I have a Christmas book next. It's about a Christmas sweater, and the star is a pug. And so we got lost one time in Montana in the woods. And it kind of tells about them getting lost and found. And that's what's going to be next. I've gotten all these photographs. So I had a professional photographer take pictures of friend's pug, and I'm well on the way to it. I think I'm past that stage I was telling you about, like, do I have a book or do I not have a book?
Well, we'll look forward to that. This current book is Alice in a Winter Wonderland by author and illustrator Jan Brett. Jan, thank you for talking with me today.
You are so welcome. It was a good way to start the day.
Now, if you'd like to purchase Alice in a Winter Wonderland, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. Thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.